So good evening. Good evening from Tel Aviv that, I'm located right now. I'm sorry about what has happened before we start. It's something that we cannot control. I suspect that Zoom should increase a lot its security level as a software. However, it's a great opportunity for us to listen Miss Dunja Lekat, who is the head of the library in the University of Maribor. Few words about Dunja. Dunja is a director at the University of Maribor Library in Slovenia. Her primary professional interests are scientific journals, digital libraries, and open science. She's going to speak about something related to open science today. And I would like to inform all of you that open science is a top priority right now in Europe. It's a top priority of the European Commission, and also it's a top priority of any research projects that I hope that we are going to get. We are obliged somehow from the European Union, if we're getting money right now from the European funds, to publish in an open access journals. And the advantages, I'm pretty sure that Dunja will present and will discuss with her. So she's very active in developing the institutional repository of the University of Maribor, the DGUEM. She was a member of a task group appointed by the Ministry of Education, Science, Sport to prepare the national document Open Access in Slovenia for the period 2015 to 2020. It is now a member of the task group for preparing the action plan of the Research and Innovation Strategy of Slovenia to 2030. The chapter on open science. So we are great. It's a great honor for us. I have noticed that we have invited such an VIP person, and we would like to thank you a lot. Dunja Lekat represents the University of Maribor Library in the regional EOCS project, National Initiatives for Open Science in Europe. She was a member of EOC Skills and Training Working Group, and momentarily is the member of EOCS Data Stewardship Curricula and Career Paths Task Force. She also manages the University of Maribor Press. That, as all of you know, we have the opportunity through the Athena European University to publish some of the work that happens within the Alliance. So I would like, as I'm removing some strange people from coming to the Zoom, I will provide the floor to Dunja in order to travel us and present us the open access publications. So the floor is yours, Dunja, and thank you very much. And thank you very much, Tatiana Salom from Tel Aviv, that you are with us. And the floor is yours, Dunja.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction, Kostas. I will now share my screen.
Yes, please, go ahead.
And tell me if it's okay.
It is okay. Make it full screen as we have done it the previous time.
It's okay now or not?
No, it's not a full screen. We should do the same thing.
Okay, where to go now?
You can stop share and you can follow the same procedure as.
No,
I think I will not renew my Zoom license anymore.
And now?
Yeah, now it's fine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So I will present today the topic Open Access to Research Publication, Reflection of the Librarian. I have prepared some mixed presentation, something about theory of open science and something about our skills that we have developed to support the research community at the University of Maribor. For the beginning, what is open science? And as you know, the motivation to share scientific information, scientific knowledge is broadly as possible, and this idea exists from the beginning of scientific communication. And in this manner, this sense is also the meaning of open science. So some definitions of open science, which means opening all phases of research to the public, dissemination of scientific knowledge as wide as possible, free of charge to all users and accessible online, Uh, the definition is also that, and the meaning of open science is that the research process should be more transparent and research outputs findable and available in standardized format through an interoperable infrastructure. And the basis of open science is to establish more cooperative work between researchers and ways of dissemination of knowledge, improving accessibility and usability of research outputs by using digital technologies and collaborative tools. So open science is collective name of a variety of different practices, and we are thinking here about open access to publications and other research results, and open data, open education. Citizen science is also one of this way of practice, research work in the context of open science. Then is also open hardware and open software. The infrastructure's point of view has stopped into this story of open science. Very important is that we as support staff at the universities to gain as much as possible open science skills that we can support researchers in the process of gaining the research work as open as possible. Also, research integrity is an important story in this case of open science. What I wish to point is that when we speak about digital research outputs in the manner of open science, we are not thinking only about the publications. Important are research data, software, workflows, and other research outcomes of your research process. And the definition of European Commission, European Open Science Cloud, is that we have to make our research outputs as open as possible and as closed as necessary. So we have to move toward to make our results as open as possible. But also there is a place that you can also secure some data if it's needed. But we have to follow this idea that anyone in the world can reuse our research results for common benefits, as I may say. And these benefits of sharing the research outputs data for researchers are that increased transparency and trust in their work, easier availability of research results for other scientists, reproducibility and reuse enabled by verifiable results, increased readability, citation and impact of researchers, long-term archiving and preservation, new ways of gaining recognition and reputation, new projects and employment opportunities can raise from collaborative work, and in the end, increased visibility and impact of your research results. And there are countless benefits to sharing research data, whether to follow an institutional or national open access mandate or their own self-imposed mission of contributing to the scholarly community and society as the whole. More researchers are adopting open science. Three basic concepts in research process in the context of open science are important. I wish to say now that we have to think about this practice of open science in the first stage of the research process. It is can be too late when we remember that we can or we must follow the open science demands from the financiers or from the project leaders or our research agencies at the end of the research process. So now it is important that we start to think about how to manage research data before we start with research process. And three concepts are important. Research data management, as I said, before we start with, we have to plan how we will manage our research data before we are starting with research process. We have to follow the principles that these data are fair. I will explain what this means later. And we have to, or it's wish to, that we follow that our research data are open. And this fair principle that we make our data sets or data results findable, accessible, interoperable, and usable are principles how to manage our data, that they are transparent as much as possible. Here I wish to say that fair data is not equal to open data. Open data, they don't need to be fair, and fair data don't need to be open. So this is not equality. So we can also close data, we can make fair, and also we wish that open data are also organized as fair data. What does it mean that our data sets, as we are now in common in the research process by articles, are standards that we have persistent identifier, that we are describe them with metadata. This is also important now for data sets which we make through our research process. And when we give our data sets the persistent identifier, when we describe them with rich metadata, we reach that they are findable. When how to access our data sets, that we are deposit them in some repositories, so make them online available, and that we restrict the use not too much. So without restriction, if they're accessible without restriction, is the best way to do them open. Interoperable are standards, controlled vocabularies, common open formats for describing them, to interchange the metadata with different systems. And the last stage is that we wish that also our data sets we use or use. So, and with this rich documentation, which must follow our data sets, we gain that other readers, other scientists understand our research data. We have to equip our data sets with rigid documentation such as protocols, instruments, conditions, and all this surrounding process, which is important, that this in which this data we explore. And we have to make clear how can others use our data. So very common is Creative Commons license. So we have to deal with different licenses. The most open is Creative Commons BY, where we only demand this or that other attribute us to our data sets, and there is different levels of this Creative Commons license. The meaning of this license is that we decide what can others do with our results. And also, this is only for brief description, also the rules for how to make software fair, while also software can be a research result. And there are also some 5 rules how to gain fairness also for software, open software. And this is much similar So use a publicly accessible repository with version control, which is by software very important. The Zenodo is such a repository which supports the version control. GitHub, we know. Also, software heritage is very important project, international project, where many of researchers deposits their softwares. Also, we can or we must add the license to our code and register our code in community registry, enable the citation of the software, and also we can, it's very important that we use also software quality checklist. And if I move forward to what is data management plan, as I said before, we have to think about our managing of research data at the beginning of the research project. And many projects demand from us or from you researchers that you have to, in the project, when you apply to the project, you have to make a data management plan to define how you will manage your data. And the data management plan is a document that describes how research data is to be managed both during the project and after submitted as a part of grant applications, but very useful whenever researchers are creating data. In the practice, you know that many times years after, we cannot read our own data when we create some research projects, and because we didn't archive with our research data all these conditions and all other parameters that data are existing. And so it's a brief plan to define how the data will be created, how it will be documented, how we'll be able to access it, how it will be stored, and how we'll back it up, whether or how it will be shared or preserved. These are all important sentences or definitions we have to think about it when we are writing a data management plan. This is some thought pattern, what we have to ask ourselves when we're thinking about how to manage research data. Most important is that we know that this is a living document. This is not set up in one moment. You can update the document with new versions. And what information is needed to be able to read and understand the data in the future is a very important question we have to ask ourselves. And therefore, we have to consider what data will be collected or generated in what formats, how will be this data collected or generated, what the documentation and metadata will be attached to the data, how will you ensure ethical and legal compliance. This is very important when we are dealing with or research in medicine or some biotechnology or in social sciences. When we have the data about persons, we have to be very careful about security of personal data, and we have to ensure ethical and legal compliance. How will you address copyright and intellectual property issues? How will be data stored and backed up during the survey? How will you manage data access and security? What is the long-term plan for storing the data set? And how you will share the data? This is the story about licensing I mentioned before. And what is the restrictions of data sharing? It will be this data open for all in the world, for all researchers of the world, it be around smaller group or with some controlled password and so on. And who will be responsible for data management within your project group? And also we have to think on the money, what financial resources you will need to carry out your plan. So this is one list of some questions we have to ask ourselves about how will we manage our data derived from our projects. Some tools that exist online that, which help us to write a data management plan. This is DMP Online, Data Steward Wizard, Argos, DMP Template, Horizon Europe. Many of these tools exist on the online to help us through this thought pattern when we think about how to manage research data. When I go now to these phases of managing data, it's very important how to think about how will we collect the data, which data we will be collecting, and how will be which this description data. So from our research work derives data, different formats, and from different measurements, survey experimentations, observations, recording, and we have to think about what formats of data derive from our research project, and how will we capture and create this metadata, and how we will retrieve perhaps existing data from the others. When we have, now before we open the data on people, we have to anonymize those data. So if we don't do this, we break the law. And very important in this process is also code of ethics and integrity for researchers. Perhaps many universities have also some ethics commissions, and they have to have to give the approval of opening some sensitive data sets. Okay, in data description, these 5 are very important type of data formats: software used, data size, and some specific characteristics. So this is this formal 5 points that we have to consider how will be our data set described. And differs from scientific field. These formats, metadata formats, we know that there are domain-specific formats. Then we can use also agnostic formats, also a standard one, or some open formats. This is very important. We must indicate the estimated data size, because also the computer capacities and storage capacities are important. And if we deal with personal information, we have to think about anonymization. Data documentation, as I said, is very important. Details on the used methodology have to follow these data sets. Relevant analytical and procedural information, data-specific informations, parameters or variables used, column headings, codes, symbols, and many use this README TXT file to write those information down and to then update this file through the whole research process. There's also some directions how to name the file that you are to gain some systematic, and that you not lose the versions. So this is the rules, and this simple example is how to name the file of your files, which consist from data, your research data. So some tips that are practical in our research life. And this is one example of metadata in a repository of Zenodo. And these are relevant type of documentation of metadata, then use of existing community standards where possible. Standards for metadata vary from discipline to discipline, and we can also use the generic metadata standards as Dublin Core or DataCite. So Zenodo is very useful repository. As I mentioned before, it supports also the versioning of our data set. And at the end, you see here that under one persistent identifier, you can get together all your versions of different softwares versions or dataset versions. So Zenodo is very practical repository. And what is also important by data management, that we also think about security against data loss. So will we secure our data sets with password protection? Will we get some or give some access restrictions? How to will we physically protect our data sets? And here is a very practical, this rule 3-2-1. So create 3 copies of your data, 1 primary copy and 2 backups. Then store your copies at least 2 types of storage media, local drive, network share, and store 1 of these copies offsite. So this is some practical tips to how to not to lose your data sets. And when you decide how or on which manner you will share the data or use, you have to pick some repository where to deposit your data sets. This is registered of research data repositories. You can choose some repository. Very often universities have their own institutional repositories. The research data is very useful because of peers of your scientific fields to use domain-specific repositories. But if domain-specific repository does not exist, you can use general repository as the node I showed, Dryad, Figshare, Mendeley. This is a lot of possibilities nowadays on the web. And use rich metadata and research community standards when describing your data. And don't forget on persistent identifiers of data sets and of yourself, as ORCID is author persistent identifier. So if you do not have some national, as we have in Slovenia, this researchers code, this is national system for unique identification of researchers. I know that you already have, well, please do the profile on ORCID and to gain your unique identification of yourself. And now if I go further through research process, at the end, the result of our research are publications. So articles, books, some other publications, and therefore is this domain of open science we are calling open access to publications. What is ideally open access is open access publications for everyone to read, download, copy, distribute, print, research for, search with use in education or another way within a limited number of legal agreements. As I said, it's open for everybody, and is the best is if it's published without any legal restrictions. So what is the difference between open access publishing, subscription-based, this traditional publishing? In open access is reading for free and publishing costs. You have to pay this article processing charge. If you pick such journal, it's not a non-APC business model. And on a subscription-based level, this traditional publishing is reading have to pay the libraries, and publishing is for free, mostly for free. So this is the major difference between those models of scientific communication. And the most important difference is in who is the copyright owner. In traditional scientific publishing, the copyright owner is publisher. You know that you with some agreements give the permission to reuse your content to the publisher. And in many cases, you have to ask the publisher if you can reuse your own content. And in the open access publishing scientific publishing model, copyright owner retain author, and you are defining the rights of usage of your work with some Creative Commons license you pick. So this is the major difference between those two models of publishing today. And here, this picture in the middle, there are these different levels of Creative Commons license. This is public domain, but is common for research data, for publications now. This is for publications the most open license, and demands from others that only attribute your work to your name. And then you have different levels, share alike, then not derivated. Others cannot make, is not allowed to make derivations from your work, or non-commercial, and also you don't allow the commercial use, and so on. So those are different levels of Creative Commons license. We have two major paths of open access publishing. This is gold open access and green open access. Very often you are now with publishers, and they offer you the to publish the open access article. This is in hybrid journal, we say in libraries. Why hybrid? Because in the one issue of the journal is only 1-2 articles open, but the rest of the content is closed. So we must, as libraries, buy the journal that you can read the whole content, not only this part of the issues, some journals. So this is not wishing away. It's because it's publisher becomes the money from two ways, from libraries for subscriptions and also from you authors for opening your article. Now exist a lot of open access journals with non-APC model or with low APC model. To spread this kind of publishing is problem, because evaluating of scientific excellence is based on the impact factor of the journals, and you have to publish the articles in the journals that your evaluation system recognize. And the new way is also this publishing platform, Open Research Europe, which established the European Commission for European projects. But to use those way of publishing more is also the restriction of current evaluation systems. So also in this way, to change the evaluation systems of scientific work in the manner of open science is in the Europe now a lot of talk, and I'm sure that also these systems will be in the future changed, and they will move from impact factor to content evaluation. So it will not be so important where to publish, but what to publish, and this is the major move away from location of the publishing. The second way of open access publishing is this green open access. It means that you are publishing in a traditional manner, and then you have to very carefully look what publisher in their open access policies allow and what embargo they describe. So after the embargo they describe, you can some version of your article deposit in institutional repositories, and in this way you can open your content. So this is one way, but as I know, the European Commission in their project, they demand the open access, gold open access model. So it's very important that you assess open access journal quality. So some of tools are this thing check submit. Then you check how many the amount of money you need to pay for APC, and what Creative Commons license publisher describes. So this is three things you have to think also in the beginning of the research process, because if the research process is from the project and you have to know what the financer or a research agency demands from you in the context of open access, and this is fine, or the better is that you know this, to check this in the beginning of the research process, because later can be sometimes also too late. This is the diagram of also pattern what do you have to think when you choose the journal. So if your journal offer an open access option, if no, you have to go this green path. And as I mentioned, it is important that you then deposit after embargo your article in allowed version. This can be post-print or earlier preprint. I don't know. You have to look to the open access policies. And then you follow this green path. When you choose the journal with open access and with article processing charge, you have also two possibilities to go to this platinum diamond route, which means that there are journals with no APC, or if you go this gold hybrid route. And in the end, you have to check if your institution, university library has these transformative agreements, because we are now where we as libraries buying the scientific literature for researchers. We also gain some free of charge APCs for you. So some amount of free of charge APCs, so vouchers. And please ask your libraries if something like this exists at your institutions. And another thing is about perhaps have your institution some open access fund that you can that they can from this fund give you the money to pay APC, or is this in the project some budget allocated for paying the APC? So those three ways is very good to check when you decide where to publish your article. Or at the end, you can also pay the APC from yourself. So this is now the most common way how to publish article in the open access. And many researchers, and they have in this transition period, right, that open access costs and not so little. So this is this transition period, and it demands a lot of money from you. So in when you go, okay, you are publishing on the traditional way, you can otherwise it is this traditional. When you make with the publisher corporate agreement, please we say to our researchers that you can ask or demand from the publisher that you although that many of rights you give to the publisher, some of them you can retain. So the reuse an article to be used in a book, rewrite or adapt an article, distribute an article among colleagues, or copy your article for teaching purposes, and file the article authorized version in a repository in open access materials. So put these questions to the publishers before you sign some traditional agreements with them to publish your research work. Some of these rights you can retain. And at the end, and many research articles are also telling so that open access increase your research visibility. And this means also a lot of work for researchers. And many researchers told me that they don't have the time for such I don't know, to be present at this all environments or research, to make those online profiles, but sometimes it can connect you to other people to gain more innovative approach to your future work, to gain more collaboration. So tell people about your work, use different media for different purposes or audience, and become findable. This is the most important. Your work have to be findable through these processes I mentioned before. Some two slides I wish to mention citizen science, as this is also a new approach in the context of open science. So many projects involve citizens in your research processes and the citizens volunteers help you to collect data. Most known such project is eBird, when you can on this platform citizens can put the pictures of the birds from your environment. For your citizens are going to walk and see the picture, see the bird, and put the picture on this platform, and then scientists use those data for their research further. So it exists European Citizen Science Association, and they have written 10 principles of citizen science, what is important to involve citizens, to genuine science outcome, to benefit from taking part, both of them, professional scientists and citizen scientists. If they wish, they can participate in multiple stages of the scientific process, and they also give some feedback from the project. And citizen science is considered as a research approach like any other, with limitations and biases that should be considered and controlled for. And citizen science project data and metadata are made publicly available, and where possible, results are published in an open access format. And also citizen science are acknowledged, they are evaluated for their scientific output, data quality. And what is more important is this active role to create new knowledge. And there are some levels of engagement of citizens. So level 1 is crowdsourcing, then citizens as sensors, volunteer computing, and distributed intelligence, citizens as basic interpreters, volunteer thinking, participatory science, participation in problem definition, data collection, and extreme citizen sciences, collaborative science, problem definition, data collection, and so on. So this is a very interesting approach with some projects where there is useful to also collaborate with amateurs, with volunteers, with citizens. And Now I will say for the end something about our experience how to support open science at the University of Maribor. So University of Maribor is very active in the open science field. We signed the Berlin Declaration on open access in 1914, and we didn't manage till this year to write an open science policy, because we have tried to do so, but at the end we decided to wait for the national legislation on the open science field, which was last year in December. We have got the national legislation on this field. University of Maribor also signed the DORA Declaration and Leiden Manifest. This is two documents very important for changing the evaluation system of science. And at our library, we for 10 years we promote, educate from topics of open access in research data management, and we also made a portal with the name of Primo but in English this is meaning as open minds, because the acronym UM is in Slovene language means mind. So this name says everything about open science. In the library, okay, we are coordinators of open science support services at University of Maribor. We administrate the University of Maribor digital repository. We have also help desk for students and researchers. Within this, our repository, how to deposit, we help them to deposit their e-thesis and scientific works to our university repository. We also monitor the open access costs to have this clue how much money our researchers give for APCs for open access. And we are also partner in European infrastructure project. And one of the results of this project is also establishment of Slovenian open science community. This is national initiatives for national open science cloud. And another result of this project is also that we gain the onboarding knowledge of research infrastructures and e-infrastructures to European open science cloud marketplace. So what is important so in operation is that we connect the depositing of research outcomes with our work process of bibliographers. So when some of our librarians make a metadata of your research work, he simultaneously also deposit the appropriate version of article in our institutional repository. And that can do our researchers all for themselves, and librarians are the viewers of the uploaded content and at the end. And we have many infrastructures interconnected for that we can do this. This is our catalog, bibliographic catalog, a repository for monitoring open access, institutional repository, and all three infrastructures are also connected to our Slovenian CRIS system. So those are the major infrastructures we are using for support our researchers for evaluating of scientific excellence and also for practicing open science. As I mentioned before, those three open science infrastructures at our university, and they are interconnected. Separately, we also have digital repository of our library, where we deposit the digital form of cultural heritage, which are also very important for education at our university. And these are some collections that we are creating within our digital repository. And in the future, we will use this repository for involvement of citizens to perhaps, for example, when we digitize some photos or photographs or some maps, geographical maps from our local region, we can ask citizens if they know something about these events from photos, dispersals of photos, and so on. And so we intend to collect as knowledge as possible through these digital objects. This is the picture of our institutional repository, where can students and employees upload their content, and you can authenticate with the digital identity. This digital repository is connected to our bibliographic catalog, so we can import the metadata from our bibliographic catalog within this institutional repository. Then we administrate, as I said before, we are at the end of the process, reviewers of the depositing content, and also then at the end we approve that it's everything okay and the content can be publicly available. And this is also at the end is the article publicly available, or it is from our students and within our digital library. And this is all and from my presentation. So thank you very much for listening to me. And if you have some questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Duha, for this nice presentation. I have some questions myself, but I will give the floor first to the audience. If there are any questions, I will appreciate, Duha, if you can stop sharing the screen right now.
Okay.
Thank you. I mean, until the rest of the people, probably they will have a question. I have some questions. I like very much, you mentioned that, I mean, the tendency is to move away from the impact factors to the content factor. Am I right? Did I get it well? So to move away from the impact factor of the journal and to have something like a content factor of the journal. So it matters what we publish and not where do we publish. Am I right? You made a comment like this, no?
Yes, in Bureau they're talking a lot about how to change the evaluation system and to move away from exclusively evaluate the science through the location of publication, this impact factor measurement, but not to content factor, but to evaluate more the content of the articles with peer reviews that they will be also much more important, the content evaluation from your peer reviewers.
Yeah, okay, this is clear, but I would like to ask you something because, you know, I have a question on this. In order to define the impact factor of the journal, this has to do with how many citations each one of these articles they received after 5 years or 3 to 5 years, depends on the journal, okay? So, I mean, in order to take citations, of course, you should have a content. Otherwise, why are there people to cite with you? So even the impact factor has a relation with the content. I mean, your content should exhibit a quality. Otherwise, the people will not cite, you know, I mean, how can I say, like low quality articles. Am I right? So the impact factor is not irrelevant to the content. And more than this, I'm not going to include into the fraction the field, which is a very important parameter regarding how many citations you are going to receive. But let's take this out. Also, you know, the higher the impact factor, the higher the reviewing. So the higher the judgment regarding your content. So impact factor is very strongly related with the content. It's not irrelevant to the content. At least this is what do I know, or at least this is what I'm realizing. This is one comment that I would like to make. Before I will move to my second question, not a comment, it's like I would like to give the floor to Joseph, who is the, and before Joseph takes, you know, the talk, I would like to advertise that the Athena research book is the only open access and without tuition fees journal. So in your table, you should renew your table. So Joseph, the floor is yours. Thank you very much to be with us.
Thank you. Yes, right now we are fighting for reviewers and for their response. First of all, Dunya, thank you for this presentation, because it is important for my lecture, which I'm giving, I think, on Monday. And I think that in this lecture, I will also partially answer to a question from Kostas. This dilemma of impact factors and about the citations, of course, is present. And maybe just a hint that ERC, the European Research Council, in a way prohibited to use the impact factor in your CVs and in your references. So please describe the content. It is with the new call. So that, of course, the citations are important, and all this is a process. And the CRIS, the current research system in Europe, is very strong, and it is mostly based on these two indexes from elsewhere and the Web of Science, of course. And what is evident is that there is some lazy approach, because some of the institutions rely on these factors and do not deal with the content anymore. So I'm not apologetic about any of this concept, but I am in favor of the process. And this discussion will be addressed in my lecture on Monday. And let me repeat that all the explanations and details about open access, which is nevertheless very related to DORA efforts and to other Leiden declarations and so on, I will try to highlight from the aspect of research funding organizations, not just in Slovenia, but maybe my European experience. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Joseph. I suspect that it's not only ERC that should say this, but the whole system should be trained in order to avoid and have among their criteria publications in the high aging index factor journals, in order to hire someone, or in order for someone to get promoted or to get the funding. Because this is a statement, but I hope the system will go to the equilibrium and use the statement and judge the content, and not anyhow. In my opinion, this is related, but this is true. I will continue with my questions to Duha, and it's very nice that this table that you placed, like if you would like to have publications without fees, you should go to journals that they are not open access. But if you would like to have an open access, you should pay a fee. I mean, in one hand, open access is more inclusive, but on the other hand, is less inclusive, because in order to publish and disseminate your work in an open access, you need to have funding. And this is not, this is not the case for everyone. I mean, there are good scientists, especially young scientists, that probably they don't have the funding in order to publish in an open access. So how the open access community, face this dilemma? I mean, you are inclusive, because the work of yours can disseminate everywhere. But on the other hand, I mean, you exclude a lot of people. I mean, if you go to the universities and check how many people do they have a projects and funding, they are not less. They are not more than 50%, no? They are less.
Yeah, this is very present, the dilemma Kostas, you now said. And I agree that there's different situations from one researcher to another, how to address this question in transition period, as also Jože said before, with evaluation system. That's why these efforts to change in some way the evaluation system of the scientific excellence, to the researcher will have more possibility to choose the journal with low or no APC. This is one way. Another way is that if is this within the project, the financer of the project have to allocate the budget for paying the APC. But the research articles or results exist also without the project, I assume. And if our national law will say that we have to publish, the academic community have to publish all articles in open access, this will be a problem how to finance all those research results.
Mhm.
I don't know,
Thank you.
perhaps Jože, if you can add something about this question.
Yeah, yes, it's quite complicated. I'd like to keep it for my presentation on
Okay.
Monday,
Sorry.
so that we have some
Sorry.
continuity and in this dramatic moment.
So let me ask you something else. I mean, there is a lot of hesitation right now as the situation is stands, that okay, if you go to open access, then probably the quality is not so good, and because you pay, you publish. You know, this is the claim of, even though that Nature and everyone of these editors, you know, they are going to be an open access, and they have, you know, there are versions that you can pay and publish. But I don't believe that you pay and you publish. You know, there is a peer review and they check this. I would like to, if there is an available, how the impact factor of the open access journals evolves by the year. Is there any tendency that this impact factor increases, which is an indication, I mean, of equality? I mean, is this impact factor, the impact factor of the open access journals, is there any table that shows how does this involve?
And I don't have an very exact answer, but if I assume that the scientists that explore this question say that open access increases the citation, it must happen. What
Exactly.
you say in many years.
Yeah. Okay. This was my suspicion. And my last question has to do with what did you say on the citizen science? I like very much this. I can hear, you know, a lot of people that they are talking around, but you explain very well about the motivation about this citizen science. Am I right? You mentioned something
Yes.
like this. All right. So how can we communicate and contact all these citizens that they probably like to be involved in any project or in any activities? How do you do it in Maribor, for example? Are you going to the municipality and say we have this project and we would like, you know, people to get involved? How we can contact these people?
I can also answer in the manner what we will do when our digital repository will be upgraded with the functionalities of tagging of digital objects, or with the samples of how to make some opinion. And we are planning to, as you said, to promote this functionality of our repository to the citizens of the Maribor, because we will start with a set of digital objects from with photographs of some events, historical events from Maribor and people, and we don't know who are they on the photos, and we wish to this manner to gain the knowledge about these digital objects. So with some promotion, perhaps Jože or Tatiana have some more experience in real research.
So these people are the active players. They are active players.
Yes,
they are not just
players.
Receiver of services. Okay.
We count on them. It's one possibility. This is our library point of view of this citizen science.
Excellent.
Perhaps, and I have read what in Stanford University and their digital lab have done. They have some documents from I don't know, old Indian language, and they don't know what is, and they're looking for some in these communities of living Indian people, if somebody can still read and transcribe this digital object. So this is librarian way, and how we will include our citizens in our activities.
Thank you, Joseph. The floor is yours.
Yes, I'm going back just for a moment. I know that's your question of the index of open science publications and their impact factor and so on. So something else happened. Actually, first, the Dunya's answer was right. Of course, if the citation number is higher, then the impact factor also grows. But the important is also the adaptation of commercial players, the big publishers. So they, at the beginning, of course, there was some resistance, but this resistance it became more quiet when Wellcome Fund, Gates Foundation, and other big players, research funders, joined the open access initiative. But what happened? The traditional journals started with open access parts, or they opened their journal. And the part of Dunya's lecture is very important in this, that part of her lecture that about the APCs. So this mechanism of paying, but not paying to be published, of course, it is a misinterpretation, paying to be reviewed, and then if you are reviewed positively, then you pay the APC. And that's important. So the mechanisms are kept, but the availability, the accessibility of your scientific work is much larger. So I still see this as a success. And of course, the state, this is important with APC, the state often pays for some quota of APCs by some of the publishers. And so the researchers are also then stimulated to do the open access. About the citizen science, Tatiana would maybe add something. I'm not so active in this field. Even I think that it's very important that the scientists, the professors do write and do appear in media. So with their qualified opinions. So thanks.
Excellent, excellent. And I like something else that Dunja has mentioned about
Dunya, Costa.
Dunya.
Yes.
You know, obviously the Slovenian names are very hard for me to accent. I like very much that in Slovenia you mentioned that you have a national policy regarding the citizen science. Am I right? Did you mention this?
No. I mentioned that European Citizen Science Association exists in Europe, and they have written some document, 10 principles of citizen science. But in the future, the Center Technical Library will be the national point for developing citizen science in Slovenia.
Okay, so I
missed action plan of our resolution for innovation strategy for the 2040.
Yeah, I missed something. Then I will check again, you know, afterwards, you know, the recording. And if I have the question, you mentioned something about a strategy of Maribor regarding the libraries, and I was wondering if we can do something about ourselves in our country, and if we have this initiative. But I will follow again your presentation later on. So Tatiana, probably you would like to answer, you know, what Joseph, you know, provides you the floor about the citizen science.
So I lost a little bit my voice. So probably it will not be really nice to listening me too long. I would go probably a bit different way in all these things. Why? In general, I believe that the scientists, we are not enough present in the society, and that the society quite often look us as a money consumer, not as a result giver and products giver. And already this part should be open Europe-wide and bring higher the awareness. We are trying to do this a bit with Europeans Researchers Night. This is one event once per year, and until another year, everyone forget actually that was there some night where they were, I don't know, in Maribor, we used to organize this in the shopping mall. And if they occasionally appeared there, okay, they have heard something, otherwise not so much. So I believe we have here to do a lot of things to bring everything closer also to the society in the broadest sense. But have to say that when we organized this to the last time, actually for the first time, also with Athena, that the people know at least very well what higher institutions are around. And I remember the mother with a small girl that she's saying, look, some new universities are coming. This would be something maybe for you when you are grown up and you're going to the university. So the things like that, I believe, are important, that the people registered in one or another way. I selected probably not the best case for that, what we're discussing now, but for me was this important point, what we have to do, or how or what informations we should give to the society.
Excellent, excellent. And I think, I totally agree with also what Joseph and what Tatiana has mentioned. The university and the academics, they should go to the society. They should not wait, the society to come to them, and they should participate in events, and they should address, and they should provide the floor, to the citizens to perform and act through the universities. All right. So I think that this is a good message to stop here and renew our date. No, date is like, I don't know if it's the appropriate word, our appointment, for next Monday with the talk from Professor Joseph Giorgos. So take care and speak you next week, and I will upload and I will send you the link of in our YouTube channel of the talk of Dunya. And I would like to thank you again, Dunya, for this nice presentation and the new insights on our knowledge about open science and what we can benefit from this. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Bye.
No, it was an honor, our honor.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.